Good morning. This is VirtualPBX-admin training. Sorry for this slightly late start. Had a little technical issue on my side here, but got that straightened out. Training lasts about an hour and a half. Feel free to make use of YouTube's chat feature to ask questions about features as I go over them. We do record these, so you can always come back later if you can't stay for the whole time. And also that gives you the ability to share that link with other staff members who may need to be system admins. So let's go ahead and get started here. So you see our dash login page. We need 3 pieces of information in order for you to log in. The first is being your email address, which should be in all lowercase letters. Sometimes some browsers may occasionally put your first letter as a capital. You want to make sure you change that to lowercase. We need your password, which should have been emailed to you. And then we need your account name, typically your organization name, business name, or it could be your own name if you signed up for yourself. If you have trouble logging in, down here towards the bottom right, just above the sign-in bar, we have a forgot your info link. If you click on that, it flips the box around. We still need your email address. All right, and then one of the two of the boxes below, right? So we need either your account name or a phone number that's on the account. And that's one of your customer phone numbers or like your main phone number. Click on the reset password box here. You'll get an email from the system with a password reset link, right? Basically, that will log you in to your account page so you can change your password. It's going to log you out after you do that. If you try to navigate away from that page, it will also log you out. But then you come back here, right? Type in your information, type in your new password, and then you have the opportunity here to click on Remember Me. Beyond that, click on Sign In. And I'm using a test account, so it's taking me directly to my dashboard page, right? It shows me basically what's going on with my system. If it's your first time logging into this system, you're actually going to be taken to your personal account page. You can always get to that page by clicking on your name up here at the top, just to the right of center. It's a big, huge pop-up, basically. That first time logging in, you're going to get some pop-up windows. So you'll get one here, you'll get one back on the dashboard page and a couple other places. But here on the user account page, main thing people do is change the password to something they can remember. You might want to change the date and time display, etc. Now, as you're not able to change your own email address, so another system admin would have to do that for you, or you'd have to reach out to our billing team, typically speaking. Now, as a system admin, over here on the left, you can also click on the account level settings. So again, the main thing that's changed here is the time zone and language display. You can edit who your technical contact is, etc. Add-ons over here on the left. This is to add on new features to your dash account. This is new. Currently, the only add-on available is text forward. In some cases, add-ons may increase your bill, right? Basically depends on your account level. Hopefully that would be specified. But if you're not sure, you can always reach out to our services team and they can verify if an add-on will increase your bill or not. Down here, we have your billing portal, and this link will take you to the actual billing portal. That's where you would see your invoices or update your credit card information. And then down here, we have, lastly, the cancel account. So any system admin can cancel the account. So you want to make sure people you trust are here to, and that won't cancel your account unless you want them to. But basically, you would click on chat with us. Otherwise, there should be a link you can click on here. Anyway, when you're done here, click on close. You'll be taken back to the dashboard page. You'll have pop-ups come up here that first time you log in. So up at the top, again, you click on your name anytime to get back to that user page. Most of us, to the right of your name, you have a D&D toggle, right? D&D standing for Do Not Disturb, meaning if you toggle it on, so if I click on it, right, the page will update. It's going to be now has a little white dot. So now it's on. Meaning I'm not taking calls, right? So calls that, like someone enters my extension number from the virtual receptionist, they're going to go right to voicemail. Right? If someone else tries to transfer a call to me, they're going to be told that I'm not available, and they have to instead transfer to my voicemail box. If you're part of the call center, right, you've been assigned to the ACD queues, you will no longer have a D&D toggle at the top of your page. Those two features do not work well together. All right, then to the right here, we have the little phone icon. This opens up a new tab and takes you to webphone.virtualpbx.net. You need to log in using your Dash login information. And you've actually had to have added a web phone as a device on your user in order to make use of it. But then you can use Chrome or Firefox from a computer to make and receive calls. And that does count as a web device. The little chat bubble here, when you click on this will open up a new tab and take you to virtualtext.app. This allows for texting if you have enabled that feature on your user. Little help icon here. This will open up the chat window with our support team, and that chat window usually opens up at the bottom right. The 3 horizontal line icon. This takes you to other Dash features. Now, for most of our training, we're going to be in the dashboard. That's like 80%. We'll touch on some of these. We'll touch on all of these to some degree. Some of them have links to in the show notes because they have their own standalone demos, which are better to do that way versus me trying to get it to work here. Lastly, you have the arrow to the right icon to log out. Here in the center, total users, I have 9, right? So I have 9 people on my account who make and receive calls. Most of our plans are based on a per user basis. So the more users you add, the higher your bill. Total devices, 28, right? So I have 28 devices among my users, and maybe not all of them are assigned to my users. And then I have a breakdown. So first up here, I have cell phone. So you can add a cell phone or a landline phone number as a device on your account on Dash, right? So the call comes in, we offer it to that device. You can pick up, you can answer the call. However, when we're sending a call to a phone number, so like a cell phone, you're not going to be able to transfer that call, right? You're an endpoint, right? So if they need to speak to someone else in the organization, you either need to take a message and have whoever they need to speak to call them back, or the customer has to call back in. The way around that would be with a soft phone app, right? Soft phone, software application, uses your internet connection to make and receive calls. So for instance, you can have our soft phone app on your cell phone. And instead of having your cell phone number as a device, you have that as a device. So call comes to that app, you answer the call, and because it's a VoIP device at that point, you can then transfer the call to other people on the account. Web phone, that's that Chrome or Firefox device on a computer. And then SIP phone, this is a piece of hardware. So this is a physical VoIP phone, right? So sits on someone's desk, typically connected via Ethernet cable to your router, and then you can make and receive calls. I have a couple unregistered devices here. The 2 listed, that would be I've turned off 2 devices on my account. The total phone numbers, I have 15. Your account includes some number of phone numbers as part of your monthly plan price. So if you just signed up with us, check the pricing page. It will tell you what you can have. I'm likely over any standard setup for us. And then here, I've got a breakdown of assigned numbers and spare numbers. Assigned numbers, I'm using it, right? Someone can dial those numbers and expect to speak to someone, leave a voicemail, join a conference, or be sending a fax. Spare number means I'm not using it right now. Could be, someone left the company, I took their number, out of service, promotion not running, or about to open a new location. Next breakdown, USDID and US toll-free, right? USDID just means a US local phone number, right? So you have a number in Portland, Oregon, or in Elmira, New York, both count as USDID. US toll-free, 800 number, 888, all the way down to 833, right? It's actually US Canada toll-free number. You can have international phone numbers on your account if you wish. You would just want to email our porting team. That's porting@virtualpbx.com. They need to know the city and country that you're interested in getting a number in. They'll let you know if that's available. and if there's any additional requirements. Conference bridges 5, that means I have enabled 5 of my users to host or moderate a conference. Now, you first have to have a main conference number before you can enable that feature on a user, but we'll be getting to that shortly. Over here towards the top right, I have my main number block. I have these 3 main numbers. So these numbers all behave the same way. They're all going to the same location. They're all going to have the same main greeting, for example. Conference number, this is the phone number everyone dials to join a conference. That includes your staff, any customers or vendors. You can have multiple conference rooms numbers if you want, but they're all going to the same set of conference rooms. All right, so once you have a number here, then you can enable that conference feature. Next up, I have the fax box number. You can have the one main fax box number, and this is your inbound fax number. This also allows you to edit your fax box so you can have outbound faxing. Then we have the company directory. We have 2 links here for CSV and for softphone. The CSV is just that, it's a spreadsheet file. It will list your staff members with their names, their extension numbers, and their devices. The CSV file, the softphone file, that is for use with the VirtualPBX desktop softphone application, right? So if you're using our softphone app on a Mac or Windows PC, you can download this file and then upload it to your softphone, and that will allow you to see the status of the other VirtualPBX softphones on your account, right? So if everyone is using the VirtualPBX softphone as their only devices, then you have a way of seeing the status of everyone, right? You can see if they're on a call or not. VirtualPBX Store, this opens up a new tab, takes you to store.virtualpbx.com, and where you can order things like a VoIP phone or a router, etc. The account realm, this is used in a couple things. It's one of the 3 pieces of information you would need to program or provision a third-party softphone, right? So using someone else's softphone app. It's also used for outbound faxing. So once you set up your fax box for outbound faxing, then what you would do is you create an email like you normally do. In the to field, you put the plus sign, the number 1, the area code and phone number you're faxing to, the @ symbol, and then your account realm. And then you just need to attach a PDF or a TIFF file, and you send a fax out, right? Basically, the system looks at the to field, the from field, and the attachment. It will not look at the subject line. It does not look at the body of the email. So anything you put in there doesn't get sent. And it only uses 1 attachment. So if you try to attach 3 different files, only one of them is going to go out, and the email confirmation won't specify which one went out. It just said your fax was completed. Even then, it could also just error out, saying, I don't know which one to send. So 1 attachment per email. All right, up here at the top, again, it says dashboard, VirtualPBX or VPBX new hire sandbox, and then I have caller ID. If I click on this caller ID, right, it's going to open a new box. Now this pull down, which unfortunately doesn't show on my streaming software, this allows you to select any of the 3 main numbers that are showing up in my main number block. And whichever number you select becomes your default number. So for instance, when you pick up a VoIP phone and make an outbound call, this number I selected here, that becomes the outbound caller ID by default. Now there's options where you can change that. Next up, we have the company caller ID name or CNAME. This is an optional feature, but it allows you to enter up to 15 characters, and it counts spaces in that 15 that you want associated with your phone number. All right, so basically when you make an outbound call, we send a number and we send this information. Again, completely optional. The company emergency information, or E911, the system wants a North American address. For our Canadian customers, in the zip code, that's where you would put your postal code. And in the state, you would put your 2-character province abbreviation. And then you click on Save Changes. Now, if you entered information here in the CNAME field, after you click on Save Changes, right, we send that information to the other carriers who support the CNAME feature. It takes them approximately 3 business days to update their servers. That's not something we can control. Some caveats in regards to CNAME is that not every carrier supports it. So and that can be either at the endpoint, right? So the person you're trying to reach, their carrier, or someone in between, right? So when you make an outbound call, your call goes through several carriers before it reaches the end. So if one of them doesn't support it, the CNAME information doesn't get all the way through. even then, that last carrier, they have final say about the information that shows up on the phones on their network. Their three options are to pass through the information we send, which is ideal, right? That's what everyone wants. The second is they can see that phone number, say, okay, we'll pass that through, and we're going to look up our own database, which may not match what we have, and put that information instead. And then the last option is they just pass the phone number through. They don't send any CNAME information. That last option is the default for when you call cell phone carriers, right? So if you're calling your customer's AT&T cell phone, most likely they're only going to see your number, right? They're not going to see the company name. In fact, most of the cell phone carriers, they want to charge their subscribers an additional monthly fee, in order to have that CNAME feature show up on their calls that come to their cell phones, right? So that's why you don't want to necessarily test with calls to a cell phone unless you have that feature enabled. Hold music, you can upload your own media files. All right, the system will play back .wav and .mp3 files up to 1 megabyte. I usually recommend make sure to record in mono so that way you can have a longer file duration. 1 megabyte MP3 plays for roughly 5 minutes in that scenario. But you click on Browse to find the file on your device, click the up arrow icon and click Save Changes. Once you do, the hold music is the default for all your staff. And just so you know, when a call comes in, right, it's going to ring, right, until one of your staff members picks up. Staff member picks up the call, say on their Yailing VoIP phone, they talk to the customer for a little bit, and then they press hold on their phone. That's when this hold music file will play. Now, hours is part of main number over here on the left, but there's other things we'd probably want to get set up first before we go through configuring the main number. And first among those is down here on the left, users. So on the users page, you see the people you've added to your account. The people with the blue suit icon, these are your system admins, right? So they can make all these changes we're talking about. People with just a gray person icon, these are your standard users. They have very limited access. Typically speaking, if you don't have queues, they're only going to be able to get to their user portal, which means they can check like things like their voicemail. They can set up call forwarding. Again, very little access. If they're part of the queues, they can also access the queues. Up here at the top, you click on Add User to add a new person. Right? Enter first name, last name. That system just wants some sort of data point there. The email address used for login needs to be unique for each user. Right? You cannot reuse an email address. This is how the system communicates to the user. Right? So this email address is what the system by default will use to send out voicemail notifications or password resets, etc. Password, you create a password for the user. Main extension number, this is where you can type in the extension number you want for this person. The system will default to starting off with extension 1000, but you can always change it to whatever you want. Excuse me. By default, and I recommend using 4-digit extensions to just give you maximum versatility. And because you can always set up menu options, like 0 through 9 to go to a specific person, but they can have a different extension number on top of that. So by default, the system will create a voicemail box for the user. This voicemail box is intrinsically tied to the user. Right? So if you added a user, you added a VoIP phone to them right off the bat, and it registers. From that VoIP phone, you can do *98. That logs them directly into that voicemail box you created. The system will then prompt them to create a voicemail box PIN number, have them record their name, which is what the system uses for the PBX directory, and then walk them through recording their voicemail box reading. All right, so then they're basically set up. Here's your option to have that person show up in the user directory. Right, you can always change this later. You can send emails to an alternate address. So if you don't want the email address used for login to get all these emails, you can put a check mark here and then put in a different email address. Doesn't come up very often. And again, you can change this later. And then lastly, send credentials to the user. I do recommend putting a check mark here. And then you click on Create User. Right? So once you create the user, they'll get an email saying, hey, welcome to your Dash account. Here's your login information. Basically, welcome to Dash. Right? If you need to create multiple, create user and add another. Now, once a user is created, you can click on their name. Right, so you can change their name, right? Someone changes their name for whatever reasons. Here, you can change their credentials if you click on that. So you can change their email address up here at the top, and then their password, and then you would have to confirm it here. You also have an option here to send them the password reset directly, right? So then they create their own password. Change voicemail box PIN number, right? You can change their PIN number. From here, you can also do that on the voicemail tab or voicemail boxes tab on the left. Right, here's your option to send to an alternate address. Here's your option to be in the user directory or not. Over here, this pull down, this allows you to change a user into an admin or an admin into a user. A little clock icon here, this allows you to change the time zone for the user, so that way their voicemail timestamps are correct. Little flag icon, this allows you to change the display language for the web pages for your staff member. You can choose English, French, German, or Russian. The ringing timeout, by default, this is 20 seconds, which is plenty of time to send calls to a landline or a VoIP phone. If someone's only using a cell phone, you're probably going to want to increase this to at least 30 seconds. All right, it takes longer to send a call to a cell phone because the cell phone carrier has to find you first, right? Versus when a call gets sent to a landline, they know exactly where that phone is. All right, and then you would click on Save Changes. You can click on the extension box, so you can add multiple extensions to a user if they need to have them, right? Like, so if a staff member leaves, but the manager wants to make sure anyone who enters their extension number from memory, right, at least someone gets the call instead of getting that it's not recognized. Users can have their own phone numbers if you want them to, right? Anywhere you can add a phone number, you'll have the option here to add from spare or by numbers, right? So add from spare is how you would use a number, right? So for instance, if I unassign this number and then click on Save Changes, well, now that number becomes available in my spare numbers, so I can move it someplace else, right? If I go to spare, you see that's the 775 number, right? And I can instead add a 424 number and then I would click Save Changes. Okay, there we go. Want to see that little green box at the top, make sure the save changed. Now, by numbers is how you add new numbers to the account. So when you click on this, you have local or toll-free. Toll-free, you choose a toll-free prefix you want to work with and click on search. It's going to give you a list of phone numbers. Now, you click add on next to any number you want to add. At this point, you actually haven't done anything. You haven't reserved the number or anything like that, right? The process is not complete until after you click on by numbers. But you can scroll down and add more numbers to this location if you want. You can always click on the little trash icon to remove a number that you added. But once you're satisfied, you click on by numbers. So now the system is double checking to make sure the number was truly available. It has to do that because that list that was being displayed is what was referred to as a dynamic list. You're actually competing with people in real time. But here you see the number has been added. I click on Save Changes to complete the process. And then you have a little icon here letting you know there's multiple here. Next up is local, right? Local, you need to know the area code you want to work with, right? So if you type in 310, which is in Southern California, you can get this message. And you can get this message for any area code, and that includes the toll-free prefixes, like 800, right? And that just means that there's no readily available numbers in this specific area code. So you'd want to use your favorite search engine and do a search for area code 310 overlay. And that will tell you that that is 424, right? And that just means an overlay means multiple area codes cover the same geographic area. And if you look at a map, like on Wikipedia, will sometimes have maps of what the various area codes cover. You can see nearby area codes, right? So Los Angeles has several area codes in the vicinity. Right, but again, same process. You add a number you like, click on by numbers to verify. Right, so if you just click on the add number part, right? You don't click on by and like you got pulled into a meeting, you came back and then try to click by numbers, it's possible you would get an error because someone else took that number. Now, when you add a phone number to like a user here or to a group, for example, which we'll be getting to next, these numbers don't have hours of operation. Right? They're available 24/7. right? So if someone has their personal cell phone, they could get calls at all times of the day. Now, you have a little gear icon next to numbers, and you can get this at several places where numbers present themselves, but you can update the caller ID, right? So you can update the outbound CNAM, as well as turn on the ability to accept inbound CNAM. E911, each phone number can have its own E911 address. This is important because this allows you then to assign that number to specific VoIP phones. So that way, you know, your staff member Bob, say he's working from home, you can assign his home address to a specific phone number, then assign that to his VoIP device. So that way, if he has to dial 911 from his VoIP phone, the proper address gets transmitted to emergency services versus your company address. And then prepend is a VoIP phone feature where in this box here to the right, you can add text in front of the caller ID that shows up on your staff members' VoIP phones. It gives them a heads up about the kind of call they could be getting. So for instance, you could type in direct here. Assuming I spelled that correctly. And so when everyone dials this particular 424 phone number on this is my on David's VoIP phone, it will show up direct and then the person's phone number. So he knows that way, oh, that someone called my number directly versus coming in through the system some other way. And let's go ahead and unassign these other extra numbers. All right, next up is the devices box where you can add new devices to an account. First one is SIP phone, right? This is that physical phone. You have these manufacturers to choose from. Some of them have a fair amount of models. Some of them have maybe a dozen. Choose the make and model of the phone that you're working with. You need to give it a name, right? So like David's phone or break room phone, something that you know where it is, right? And then we need the MAC address. The MAC address is unique to each device, typically a sticker on the back of the phone, or the phone's plugged in under its status or basic settings. So then you would click on Create Device, and then you click on Save Changes. After you've done that, you want to come back here and then click on the device name again. Select Advanced, and then scroll down and click on Miscellaneous. Where it says Allow Reprovision, click on Unlock. Right, this box will disappear, and then you click on Save Changes. So that's telling the system, hey, this phone's about to be provisioned. At that point, within our dashboard, you're basically done. However, you need to log into that phone's web user interface. Basically, you get the IP address, put the IP address in your web browser, and you need to get the phone a URL to tell it to get its configuration file. For the specifics of that URL, for instance, and where to look for, you want to go to support.virtualpbx.com and do a search for auto provisioning. That will give you the screenshots of these various manufacturers as proper syntax for that URL and a couple settings in some cases. All right, next up is cell phone, and this also applies for landline. You give it a name, and then here under number, you put +1 area code and number. And then click on Create Device, and then Save Changes. I'll click on this one here. So again, you see the name, you see the +1 area code and number. If we go to Advanced and under Options, this is the default setup for a cell phone or landline. So when a call comes into the system and we offer it to a cell phone or landline, right, that phone will ring. And when you pick up, you'll hear, this is a forwarded call. Please press 1. Right? So when you're pressing 1, you're telling the system, yes, you're there, and yes, you want to take this call. That's great if it's actually going to a person. Right? If, for instance, let's say you've contracted out with another company to handle your after-hours calls, right? So they have an automated service like, say, hey, just send calls to this phone number, right? So you'd add that as a device, probably on a user, potentially just by itself. But what you would want to do is come here under the advanced options and see where it says allow use of cell phone's voicemail. You want to put a check mark here. What that does is now when we send a call to this phone number, we're not saying anything about this is a forwarded call, press 1. We're saying that we hear that pickup tone, we connect a call, right? So the automated answering service can pick up and handle the call from that point forward. Now, if this is an actual cell phone, right? So someone's personal cell phone, if you have this checked, what can happen is when their cell phone voicemail picks up, right? That's still a pickup tone. So that inbound caller ends up on that person's personal cell phone voicemail. Some people want that, some people do not. Another thing that comes up here is keep original caller ID. So when we send that call to your cell phone, by default, right? Say, so customer Mary is calling, customer Mary's phone number will show up on your cell phone. You say you've had a lot of telemarketers call you or robodialers, what have you. You're like, I don't recognize the number, I'm letting it go. Maybe you're able to reconnect and help customer Mary, maybe she's moved on. Right. So what you could do is uncheck this and then click on Save Changes. And when you do, instead of seeing customer Mary's phone number, if we go back to your dashboard, right, this 512 number that I have selected as my default number, that's the phone number that shows up on my cell phone. Right. So now hopefully you would recognize your company number. So then you would say, oh, I recognize the number. Let me try to take the call and hopefully help the customer. All right. For next new device, soft phone, right? So this is a software application, uses your network connection to make and receive calls. You'll always, whenever you add a soft phone or a web phone, you'll get this warning message, basically saying, hey, there's a thing called wireless VoIP technology, which means if you dial 911 from, say, your soft phone, you might not be at the physical location that's associated with this device. So please be aware, right? Then click close. Then you're gonna get a big box. Now, this setup right here, it defaults to a third-party soft phone, meaning you're using someone else's soft phone application. That's perfectly fine. If you want to do that, you just put a name here. You're going to copy the SIP username, click on the SIP password box, copy this, and then you also need to copy the realm, right? Those are the 3 pieces of information you would need to program that other company's soft phone app. If you want to use the VirtualPBX soft phone, then you want to look down here towards the bottom, right? Below the view configuration link, there's a toggle. It says use third-party application, but you can click on that. So now it flips it. It says use VirtualPBX application. You still need to give it a name. And then you would click on create device. And then you would click on save changes. Once you click on save changes, Dante here is going to get an email saying his VirtualPBX soft phone is ready. It's going to have his login credentials for that soft phone. It's going to have download links. So he can download it to, say, his Samsung phone or to his Mac PC. In terms of adding the VirtualPBX soft phone, you can only do it directly to a user, right? If you add it on the devices tab, you're only going to have the option to add a third-party soft phone. Lastly, I want to cover the web phone. Again, you get that warning message. It's pretty simple though, because you just need to give it a name and then click on create device and then save changes. The web phone uses your dash login information. So once you click on save changes, Dante, he can just open a new tab, go to webphone.virtualpbx.net, log in, uses his dash login information. And as long as he's on Chrome or Firefox on a computer with a good network connection, then he can make and receive calls directly from his browser. All right, next up, we got user features. The first one is caller ID number. Right, so when you click on this, it's going to open up a box. Up here is where you click to enable. This is for people who you've assigned a phone number to directly. When you turn it on, what you're doing is saying, hey, this phone number that's assigned to them is their outbound caller ID, right? Not the main number that you set up on the dashboard page. Right, so like if you have people assigned to specific regions, right, then you can say, hey, just have a phone number so it looks like they're in the correct region. So that way the people they call will more likely to pick up. Oh, if you're interested in virtual text, especially if you just signed up with us, you're going to need to talk to our account services team. They need to go over a few things with you, most notably uh, SMS registration. If you look in the show notes, there's a link actually to the business SMS webinar series. The first one in that is about registration. But once that's straightened out, then you'll have a virtual text option here, which you can then enable it, select a number, click on Save Changes. I'm not sure why it's not on this count, at least it was at one point. So let's go to voicemail boxes. So here, this is a default setup, right? It's enabled. We have voicemails to email, which means right down here, we attach basically an attachment to the email. So when you get a voicemail, right, you get an email saying, you have a new voicemail. Here's the date, the time, the phone number involved, and the extension number involved. There'll be an MP3 attachment. Voicemail boxes can hold up to 100 messages. After that, they're full and cannot accept any more. You have 3 ways to listen to your messages, right? The first one here being the email. And then there's 2 ways to manage the voicemail box. So on a system that has calls that go to a virtual receptionist, right? So you have a main greeting play first. When you hear that main greeting from any phone, cell phone, landline, etc., you can hit *97. That tells the system you want to check voicemail. It will ask you then for your voicemail box number and your PIN number. You can listen to your messages. You'll have the option to delete them as well. Obviously, if you have a VoIP phone, right, you can just pick it up, do that *98, log in, and manage your voicemail that way. You can also go up here, right? If you logged in and click on User Portal. Now, your standard users automatically start off going when they log in, they go right to their voicemail box tab here, right? For a system admin, you have to select that user portal, but then you can listen to your messages, you can download them, and then that's your option to change its status. Go back to the dashboard here. Follow me. This is for people with multiple devices. And so let me disable this one real quick here. So this is something you have to set up for your staff if they have multiple devices, but first you would click on enable. Then you have to decide how do you want the system to handle it, right? By default, once you enable, it says it's not ringing anything. So you would need to uncheck next to the devices you want the system to work with. When you do so, the little green bar shows up. You can click and drag that to give it a ring time. Typically, you want to give it at least 20 seconds or so. Up here at the top, right, these are timestamps. It defaults to 120 seconds. You can increase that if you want to. You can also then click distribute, right? So now it equalizes the time offered between these 2 devices, right? So it rings my first one for a minute and a half, give or take, and then it offers it to my web phone. I can click and drag and change the order, and then click distribute again. So now it's the web phone that's going first. Now, at any time as an admin, I can come back in here, uncheck the cell phone, distribute again. Right, so now it's offering it to these 3 devices in this order every time. And then you would click on Save Changes. Fax box, you can choose to have a user have their own fax box if you want to. You just click up here to enable. Then you have the option of using a spare number, buying a new number, or add a new extension number. I recommend making use of a phone number. That gives this person the most versatility, right? Because they can send and receive faxes, and there's basically everyone can send them a fax. If you choose an extension number, right, now you're limiting this person. First and foremost, they can only ever receive a fax. They'll never be able to send a fax out because the system will always go to the settings of their user, right, the specific settings, and say, oh, they have a fax box. I'm going to use these fax box settings when it comes to sending a fax out, but it's going to use the extension number as the outbound caller ID, which will fail. The other potential limitation is on the inbound side, right? So some of these electronic fax services don't have a provision to send faxes to an extension. So that means these people can't fax to this particular user. Even then, when like on an analog fax machine, right, you'd have to have someone who knows that machine, that they can, add pauses and then an extension number, or they listen in and said, okay, now I can enter the extension number and then click send fax. All right, Conference Bridge. Up here at the top is where you enable it. And then as an admin, you just need to create a PIN number for them. They can change the PIN number themselves via the user portal. You click on Save Changes. The enable video conferencing, this would be only within in-house use, right? So any of your Dash users can make use of video conferencing when they join this conference. Anyone outside would not be able to. Call forwarding, you have three choices: off, on, or failover mode. Your staff members can turn call forwarding off or on their own via the user portal or using a feature code on their VoIP phone. Failover mode is something you would have to set up for them. Now, this is basically if the user doesn't already have a mobile phone or a desktop landline phone as one of their devices, right? If they're only using a VoIP device, then you would be using failover mode. Because basically what it's for is VoIP phone goes offline for whatever reason, right? Dog ran by, pulled out the cable from the Yearling phone. So the phone's unregistered. Call comes in the user at that time with failover mode active, then you would send the call directly to that person's cell phone, for example. And then they can still handle the call, right? And then they can get their VoIP phone straightened out and they can be back online. But basically here, you put +1 area code and phone number, and then you would click on Save Changes. Now, with users that already have a cell phone, like I do here, there's no point in having call forwarding since the cell phone is part of the answering mix. All right, customize call recording appears where you enable. By default, it looks like this, right? So nothing's actually selected. You have to tell the system what kind of calls you want recorded. So inbound internal would be a coworker call, right? So Dante called me. Do I want to record it? Yes or no? Right. Now, inbound external, customer Mary called me, right? I probably want to record those if I'm going to do any kind of call recording, right? Outbound internal, right? I called coworker Dante, right? And then outbound external, I called customer Mary. So this is one of the common scenarios we see, or people just record them all. And then click on Save Changes. Now, your account includes some amount of data storage as part of your monthly plan price. If you just signed up, please check the pricing page. It will tell you what you have. If you have heavy call volume and you're recording every call, you're going to want to talk to our account services team about AWS integration. This allows you to link your Dash account to an AWS account of your own, and then you can use Amazon Web Services, right, AWS, to store your call recordings there. For high volume accounts, that's going to be way more cost effective for you than storing with us. All right, music on hold. You can choose to have users have their own hold music. All right, you can upload a .wav or .mp3 file up to 1 megabyte in size. Click the little browse button here to find the file on your computer. Up arrow icon. Once it's done uploading, click Save Changes. So now, whenever they press hold on their VoIP phone, the file you selected here plays instead of the one we set up on the dashboard page. So for instance, if you want your salespeople to have one version of hold music, and then your rest of your staff have a different hold music, right? The default under the dashboard page, that would be for everyone else. And then for each of your individual salespeople, you would come here to music on hold. Do not disturb. This allows you to take a user to be unavailable or available. Okay, click on Save Changes. And then hot desking. This is a VoIP phone feature. It's designed for a shared or hybrid scheduling, or shared office environment or hybrid scheduling scenario. You would click here to enable, and then you give them a hot desk ID number. So if you use a 4-digit extension numbering system, I would say just make the hot desk ID their extension number. You can choose to require a PIN number or not, and then you click on Save Changes. So I come into the office on Tuesday. I sit down on desk number 2. I pick up that phone. I hit *11 on the phone. That turns on hot desking. It's going to ask me for my hot desk ID, and will then ask me for a PIN number if the system admin required it. Then I'll get a message saying calls for you will be sent to this device, right? So the rest of my workday, someone enters my extension number, the phone I'm sitting at rings. Right, end of my workday, I pick up the handset, I hit *12 to turn off hot desking, right? And it'll ask me for my hot desk ID. Next time I come into the office, right? We'll say that's Friday. Angela's sitting at desk number 2. I say good morning. And I, sit down at desk number 3 because that's the open desk. Pick up the phone, *11, enter my desk ID, and now I'm getting calls at that desk. All right, so we got users and probably devices. So now we can go over to groups. So groups are like departments, also referred to as hunt groups or ring groups. Up here at the top is where you click on add group. You give it a name, you give it an extension number, right? So that way people can transfer calls to the group. You click and drag your staff members that you want to be in the group, and then you click on create group here at the bottom. Once a group is created, you can click on the name. So you can always change the name. And honestly, only you or your staff would really know the names. It doesn't really matter to your customers necessarily. The group call attempts, this is how many times the system will offer a call to the members of the group. And then in the box to the far right, there's a little arrow so you can increase or decrease that as you need to. Obviously, if you don't need the group anymore, you can delete it here. Otherwise, you would click on Save Changes. To the right, we have the members box. So we'll click on that. This shows your staff members that you've assigned to the group and how you're offering calls to them. Excuse me. So this setup here is referred to as blast ring or ring all, right? So it's offering call to all 3 people. Whoever picks up the call first gets it. Now, what can happen is, let's say Taylor and David both pick up their phones at the same time. Well, they're both not talking to the same person, right? The system has decided who gets it and who doesn't. So let's say Taylor gets the call, right? So he's helping the customer. David gets dead air, right? He probably says, thank you for calling, and blah blah blah, and then it's like, hello, hello, right? No one's there. Now, if Taylor and David are in the same office, right, then David could probably hear Taylor on the phone, go, oh, okay, Taylor got it, customer's good. If people are working remotely, you would need some like Slack or something like of that nature to confirm, or a system admin can check the call logs to make sure it got offered to or picked up by somebody. Now, up here at the top are timestamps, right? It defaults to 120 seconds, 2 minutes. You can change that to say, 400. And then again, you can click and drag to lengthen these out if you want to. You can also click distribute, right? So in this scenario, first call gets offered to Taylor every time. It doesn't matter if he's on a call or not, right? The system's still going to try to offer a call to him. So in this case, for over 2 minutes, and then it will go to David. Right now, I can always click and drag, so that way that second caller and or that third caller don't have to wait as long for someone to pick up. Down here, you can add more staff members. So, hopefully your staff will tell you, hey, it's been really busy today or this week or what have you. So then you can click on some additional people to add to the group. You can click redistribute if you want, or you would just click and adjust. And just like under the follow me settings, right, you can click and drag people. So let's say Taylor gets put on a project. I can change the order. So now he's at the end. And over here to the right is where you would remove people, and then you would click on Save Changes. Groups can have multiple extension numbers if you want them to. Right, you would just click on Add Extension here. Right, just like users, groups can have their own phone numbers. Right, this phone number is 24/7. No holidays or hours of operation. And then we have the group features. First is ring back. So when a call comes in, it's offered to your staff members, right? Their phones start to ring. That ringing sound is piped back to your inbound caller. That's the default. If you enable ring back, then you can instead upload your own file to play instead of that ringing sound, right? mp3.wav up to 1 megabyte. Click the browse button, find the file, up arrow icon, and then save changes. Next action, this is if no one picks up, where do you want the call to go? You have a pull down here. Basically, you can send it back to the main menu. You can send it to a different a call queue. You can send it to a different group, a specific device, right? So someone's specific phone, like a emergency phone or the backup phone, or whatever you want to call it. Or you can send it to a voicemail box. Then click on Save Changes. Allow call forwarding. If you turn this on, enable it, click on Save Changes. Now your staff members can make use of call forwarding. again, if say if all members have a cell phone as part of their call or their device mix, you don't need to make use of call forwarding. Oh, one thing I should point out, calls to a group, when they're offered to your staff members, they ring all of their phones, right? So calls from the group ignore the follow me settings that you set up under the user, right? So let's say David's got 3 phones. He has follow me set up to ring, his soft phone, then his web phone, then his cell phone in that order. But if he gets a call from a group, all 3 ring at the same time. So at least in that way, it's an audio way for him to know, oh, this is a group call versus someone calling my extension. But that can also be a little annoying for people as well. Caller ID prepend, this is for your VoIP phone users. You can enter either text or numbers to add in front of the caller ID that shows up on your staff members' VoIP phones. I recommend using one or the other. I personally prefer text just because it's easier for me to process, because sometimes the numbers bleed into the caller ID of the inbound caller, and then that can cause problems when I'm trying to call them back. All right, so now we've got users, we've got groups, we've likely added devices to our users. So now we can go up to the main number. So up at the top, main company numbers, shows all my main numbers on the account. I can buy new numbers or add spare numbers, right? So to reuse a number if I want to have more. Gear icon here for caller ID, E911, and prepend. Once you have numbers in place, though, then you can have your office hours strategy set up. By default, new accounts are started off at 24-hour open office, meaning you're ready to take calls. But if you do custom office hours, click on the little radio button here. For each day of the week that you're open, put a check mark in front of it. And these boxes here to the right, enter your open hours in 24-hour or military time. You also have the option here to say that your system goes into lunch mode at the same time every day that you're open. Right? You just click on the box here and then set your lunch hours in that 24-hour military time. And then click on Save Changes. Then we have office holidays. If you're closed for holidays, put a check mark here. And then over here on the right, click on Add Holiday. You have the options for single day, date range, or advanced. Single day, just like I have here for Christmas Day, right? It's just one day. Give it a name, choose the month and the date, save changes. Date range is for several days in a row, right? So like I have here for holiday, so I gave it a name. I chose a start date and an end date, and then I click on Save Changes. As a precaution, we recommend against having a date range that includes New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, because the system doesn't have a year indicator. That hasn't been a problem that I can remember in recent days, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. Advanced is like I have here for Memorial Day. I gave it a name. I choose the month, and then this second pull down, which it's not going to work. You have first through fifth, as well as last, and then you choose a day of the week, and then click on Save Changes. And if you don't need a holiday any longer, click on the little trash icon, and then click on Save Changes. Then we have incoming call handling. So for those 3 main numbers, how do I want the system to handle calls during my open hours, during my after hours, and during my holidays, right? I have these options are basically the same. So first option here, call comes in, goes to my virtual receptionist, right? Auto attendant. If you click on this virtual receptionist link, opens up a big box. So here, your main menu. This is what people can press on their phone to navigate through your system. You click on Add Route, gives you a new row. You have 0 through 9, as well as the star key and the default action, and then where you want it to go on your system. So for instance, right, you can go to the directory, you can go to a specific person, go to a call queue if you're making use of queues, you can go to one of your groups, you can go to a specific device, although that's not always recommended. You can go to a media file, which after the media file is done playing, the call will end. If you're making use of submenus, right, you wanted to say, hey, press 1 for English, 2 for Spanish, you would create those and they would be under the advanced call flows. Over here on the right, you have your greeting options, right? So this is where you say, thank you for calling, your business name, and then you give directions in terms of how to navigate, or more specifically, what to press on their phone to get to places. First up is text-to-speech, right? You can type in this box here, up to 250 characters, not words, characters. Does not count spaces. So that gives you a little bit of leeway. And it's going to read it back to the inbound caller in a computerized or robotic voice. Now, unfortunately, you're not able to name the file. The system names it for you. And in this case, that would be main open hours menu TTS, right? Because this is our main menu. It's on during my open hours, and it's text to speech. Now, so let's say I called in and I didn't like this greeting, right? So then I just add, you know, leave a message, right? So I just added one extra line. Once I click update and then save and then save changes, now I have two files called main open hours menu TTS, which from any of the pull downs will be hard to determine which one is which. So the text-to-speech screen is great if you're just starting out, right? You don't know exactly how you want your calls to route. Maybe you're not used to PBX systems, what have you. But if you're making use of text-to-speech, good way to get started. When you create one, all right, I'll click Save Changes just to make sure. Over here on the left, go to Greetings, and you want to look for that. Actually, we can do a search here. Oops. So here's main open hours menu TTS. You can see I already have two, but if I only had the one, right, I would click on the little rich icon and change the file, right, to something I recognize, at least like, first greeting or something like that. Okay, upload your own file, .wav.mp3, up to 1 megabyte. Choose from existing files, right? This pull down will show anything that's already on the system, whether it's a TTS file, what a voicemail greeting file, hold musical file, etc. They're all going to be available here. So you want to try to use file names that you can recognize quickly. You can record it over the phone. Now, when it says pick up a phone registered on the account, that means pick up a VoIP phone, right? So a Yailing phone or soft phone, web phone. Right? Because when the phone is registered, the system knows, oh, it's associated with the account, it's safe to use. Now, if you want to instead use a landline or cell phone, that's fine. Just under settings, you want to go down here where it says allow outside recording and turn that on, right? Save and save changes. So now you can call in from any phone number to change your main greeting, right? The reason that's off by default is a security feature, right? Because by using a VoIP phone on an account, it's safe, right? The system knows, oh, it's part of this account. It's okay for it to make changes. Whereas someone calling in from their cell phone, the system doesn't know anything about that number. Then this PIN number, right? You'd have to enter this PIN number to change the greeting. This PIN number is specific to this time of day, right? So I'm in my open hours. So if I called in on Saturday, right, because I'm closed on Saturdays, and I tried to enter this PIN number, I'd get an invalid entry message because it's not the correct PIN number for my after hours use. Oh, and if there's already a greeting file in place, then the system will overwrite with what you record, right? So by default, you already have, as a new signup, you're going to have one greeting in place, right? Just a generic text-to-speech greeting. So when you call in, right, you hear that greeting play, you can enter the PIN number, and then you record your new greeting over the phone. The file name will stay the same, right? But you overwrite the content. And I only bring that up just because during the holiday season, people sometimes get in a rush and lose their primary greeting for the year if they don't have a copy. Next up is professional recording services. When you click order, this will open up a new tab and take you to Snap Recordings. They're a separate company, but they have like 100 voice actors and actresses to choose from. They have various packages. They bill you directly. They send you the file. So then you'd come back up here to upload your own file. All right, so next we're on settings. Number of retries on missed dial. This is how many times your inbound caller can make a mistake. Right, so they get one attempt built in automatically. So these are how many additional attempts you're adding on top of it. So in this case, I'm adding 2 additional attempts. So they get 3 tries total. Right, so after that last attempt, they'll get a message saying, We did not recognize your entry, and then do one of two things. Excuse me. If I have a default action in place, it will then transfer the caller to that default action. If I don't have a default action in place, it will end the call. It will say goodbye. So in this case, I do have a default action. So it would, after that third failed attempt, it would send them to my directory. Dialing timeout. This is how much time the system waits to hear a second and or third button press, or fourth even, right? So i.e. caller calls in and presses 7. Well, that's not a valid option right now. But maybe if they have additional digits, they enter in a valid extension number. And at that point, then they can transfer the call. Allow outside recording. That's allowing to use cell phone or voicemail or cell phone or landline to call in to change your main greeting. Excuse me. Allow dialing extensions. By default, this is on. And that just means if the inbound caller enters a valid extension number, the system will transfer the call to that extension number. If I turn that off, that means my inbound callers can only press these 4 options and or eventually get to the default route. And then lastly, suppress the playing of invalid entry, right? So if I don't want the system to tell the inbound caller that they made a wrong choice, I can turn that on, right? That basically suppresses the message from playing. Any changes you make to the main menu, the greetings, or these settings, you want to click Save here, and then Save Changes here. All right. So my after hours, I chose this second option. This is the live operator answer option. This is basically saying, hey, I want to give a staff member or multiple staff members an opportunity to answer the call first before I send them to my virtual receptionist. Right. So this is the pull down, so you can select users or groups, devices even, etc. that it offers to first. But then I have my virtual receptionist link. Again, since this is my after hours, right, would have different menu options. I'd likely have a different greeting and different settings. For my holidays, I've selected this third option where I'm telling the system, hey, skip the voicemail and go right to this voicemail box. However, this pull down, right, I can still offer the calls to, I don't know why I go to my directory first, but you can send it to a user, a group, a queue, a device. You can even have a media file play, right, saying, hey, we're close to the holidays, etc. So select what you want and then choose the voicemail box you want to go to. Then save changes. This other option here that I haven't really touched on, this is a fairly limited case, right? This is for sending calls to an advanced call flow that you may have worked with our services team to create, or if you have multiple auto attendants and you made one or more of them available in main menu, they would show up here as an option. We'll be getting to auto attendants shortly. Main conference number, you have multiple conference room numbers, right? Just add from spare, buy new. It goes to the same set of conference rooms. You also have the option here to customize the greeting. It's a text-to-speech greeting, right? So you type in what you wanted to say and click on save. Even if you leave this disabled, when you call your conference room number, it still says welcome to the conference and then prompts the caller to enter the conference room number and then the PIN number. Main fax box number, you can only have the one number. Once it's been added, you can click edit fax box here. Notification, right? You put an email address here and that email gets a message every time that a fax comes in, right? So they get an email saying, you have a new fax, here's the date, the time, phone numbers involved, here's the attachment, and a PDF. Now, if someone dials your fax box number and then hangs up, right, this person would still get an email saying that there was a failed inbound fax attempt. Now, in the call details, right, in terms of like the phone number, it might say like wireless number, right? In which case that would tell you someone dialed the wrong number. You don't have to worry about it. But if it's a number you recognize and or expecting a fax from, then you would want to reach out to them saying, hey, the fax didn't come through. The email permissions here, this is designed to put your company email domain here. So basically anyone at VirtualPBX can send out a fax from this system, even if they're not a user on the account, right? They just need to know the proper domain or realm, excuse me. Right, so +1 area code and number, and then that realm, right? Attach a PDF or TIFF, click send. Right. Auto attendance, this is a plan specific feature. This allows you to create secondary or additional auto attendance. Uh, the use cases we see are typically for submenuing, right? One for English, two for Spanish. So then you would create an English and Spanish attendant here. Or if you have multiple businesses and you want them on the same account, right? So you're offering calls to the same staff people, but these different businesses have their own phone numbers, right, and their own main greetings. So up here at the top, you would click on Add Attendant. You need to give it a name. You need to give it an extension number. Click on Create Attendant. Now, once it's first created, when you click on the name, it defaults to being unavailable in main menu, meaning it's designed to be a standalone attendant. Right? If I want it to be a sub-menu option, then I would click Available in main menu. Right? Auto attendants can have their own phone number, so you can buy from or buy new or add from spare. Right? You got a little gear icon here too as well. The extension box, you can add multiple extension numbers to an attendant. Your customers will probably never know these extension numbers, but your staff could use it to transfer calls to the proper attendant. And then you have the little wrench settings under settings, excuse me. And you'll see here, I have open hours, after hours, and holidays. This will match what we set up under main number. But again, your routing is it's always going to go to a virtual receptionist. So you would need to set up your routes, your greeting, etc., and then save changes. All right, devices. This shows your devices on the account. Green means it's registered, i.e. we can send calls to that device. Red means it's not registered. Like for a soft phone or web phone, they haven't logged in, for example. For a physical phone, they might be having a network problem. We don't know. Black device like I have here means I've turned it off, right? That's one of those unregistered devices from the from that dashboard page. Up here at the top, you can add devices, right? SIP phone, soft phone, cell phone, etc. It's basically the same as we showed under the user. It's just here, you're not assigning it any place. You're just adding it onto the account for use later. You can click the wrench icon under edit so you can see the device. So this is a VirtualPBX soft phone. So for audio, I would want to make sure that the codec selected is Opus, which is the default. If I added a third-party soft phone, I would want to make use of G711A and G711U as the codecs instead of Opus. Right, and you can click and drag. Emergency caller ID, this is where you would sign a specific phone number that has the correct address for this person. So that way, if they dialed 911 from this device, it shows the proper address for emergency services for this person. One thing I wanted to, again, emphasize is for the soft phone, you don't have the ability to change it, right? It's only a third-party soft phone here. So if you're making use of someone else's app, that's fine. But if you want to use our app, you need to go to the users. For physical phones, so like I have down here for this J-Link phone, right? Not the credentials, excuse me. Audio, right? It should be at G711A and G711U. And then beyond that, that's about it there. Greetings tab, this shows all the media files on your account. Right, so you've got the name, oops. Right, the source, TTS, text-to-speech. Uploaded the file. Recording means it was recorded over the phone. This column here allows you to play back the file directly in your browser. If for some reason that doesn't work, then to the right, you can download the file to your device and use your device's media player to play back the file. And then you have the wrench icon here, so you can change the name, or you can delete the greeting altogether. Numbers starts off on your numbers and use page, basically showing you where your numbers are assigned. You can do the little gear icon here directly, so the caller ID, E911, or PPEN. You can't unassign a number here or assign it here. It's just showing you where they're at. The spare numbers tab, right? So these are the numbers you're not using right now. So if you wanted to remove a number from the account, you would click on the little box in front of it. And then you would have the option up here to click delete. And you confirm the deletion. And now you have less numbers. All right, you can buy local or toll-free numbers to add them directly to your spare list. Oops. The port link here, this will start the port process, right? Basically allowing you to port in a new number. Basically, you're moving a number from one carrier to another. So from like Verizon to us, for example. You need to give a name, choose local or toll-free, click next. Then it's going to ask you for a copy of your bill and PDF format. There's a form to fill out after that. You'll then have an opportunity to download a blank LOA, letter of agency, and then upload the completed and signed LOA. Right, the LOA is going to match the information that was just filled out on that form in terms of, the company name, right, whatever Verizon has on file for you, the address, again, what they have on file for you, the numbers that you're going to port in. Now, some numbers to port in, you need a PIN number. This is not how you it's the account PIN number or transfer PIN number, depending on the carrier. That's typically from the mobile carriers or some Canadian or some VoIP carriers and some Canadian carriers. Sometimes the cell phone carriers, we get a warning right off the top saying, hey, this needs a PIN number. Everything else we won't know until after we try to port. And in some cases, it's actually on your invoice. So if we see it there, we'll add it in. Basically, then we send the documents over and hopefully it gets approved, right? Toll-free numbers typically take about 1 week, right? 3 to 5 business days. Local numbers, anywhere, they average about 2 to 3 weeks. And that presumes everything's correct. If we get a rejection, we double check to make sure there wasn't a typo anywhere, especially on our part. Or in the case of like an address, like if we saw multiple addresses on your documentation, we would try those other addresses as well. But once we've exhausted every avenue that we have available to us, then we would let you know, hey, we're getting a rejection for these reasons. You're going to want to contact your current carrier to find out what the proper data should be. All right, voicemail boxes shows all the voicemail boxes on the account. Right. If there's data in this third column, right, that was the voicemail box created with the user. Up here at the top, though, you can create your own voicemail boxes for like your groups, for instance. But you give it a name, a voicemail box number, and a PIN number, and then you click on create new voicemail box. So I'll click on this one here, right? So this information, right, the voicemail box number and the PIN number, that's what you would use to check the voicemails over the phone, as well as change the greeting over the phone. Under advanced, go to greeting media. You can upload a file directly to the voicemail box, right? .wav, .mp3, up to 1 megabyte. Or if you have a generic message you can already saved, you can choose that from the pull down. The temporary file, right? This is for that out of office or vacation message. So if you have 2 files selected, right? One in media and one in temporary, the temporary file plays only. The media file will not. The media file will not play again until you select temporary back to none. And then save changes when you're done. Recipients, your user voicemail boxes have one recipient built in, right? The email address used for login. But for any voicemail box, you can click here to add a new email address, right? So like if you're the manager of a particular user wants to make sure they get copied, you can do so. But for any voicemail box you create, you want to at least add one email address here, right? So someone gets notified when a voicemail box comes in, or voicemail comes in, excuse me. And then options. So once a voicemail box has a recipient and a media file, then you can click, or greeting, I should say, right? Then you click on already set up. And then you can verify. Typically, you want the delete after notification for any busy voicemail box, right? But you definitely want to attach the voicemail messages. All right, text forward. This is an add-on feature. So I believe on the starter plans, it would increase your bill. But this allows you to have a phone number set up that they can receive a text, and then they'll send that text on. Now, up here, you click add number, choose a number on the account. You can either enter an email address or a webhook. Now, a webhook means you're basically sending it to another piece of software, right? So you would have to have webhooks enabled on your account. Right, so you have one or the other. The easiest is this email, which is what these are all set up for. Basically, any of these numbers get a text, right, an SMS message. This email address gets an email saying, hey, you have a text, and here's the details. Right, call logs shows your call history on the account. You can go today, this week, this month. These are all downloadable as a CSV file. The green arrow to the right, that's a call coming into the system. If you click on it here, then you see the various legs of the call, right? So the first leg is a call coming in, and then these are the devices it tried going to, and basically what happened. So you see a couple call rejected. A normal clearing means it ended normally, right? Yellow arrow to the left, that's an outbound call. So here I can see, oh, this device, right, made the outbound call. So I know it was a legit device on the account. Custom allows you to change the date range so you can go further back in time. The system will let you go back up to 1 year. If you need to go back further, you actually need to contact our support team so we can escalate the issue, but our engineers can only go back up to a total of 18 months, right? After that, the data is not available. So if you need your call logs for any compliance reasons, you probably want to do this every month. Feature codes. These are ways for your VoIP phone users to access Dash features directly from their VoIP phones. This obviously is here. You can also see it on our support pages. Also on the support pages, you can look up the phone commands cheat sheet, which will have the context help. All right, so that's the dashboard. Next up is blacklists. This allows you to create a list of phone numbers that you want to block from reaching your system. You start by clicking edit blacklists, and then you click add to create a new list. Or you can click on an existing list. Right? You give it a name, and then you choose if you're blocking anonymous calls or not. Right? Anonymous call means we're not getting a valid inbound caller ID. Right? By default, it's off. Right? So the calls would come through. If you don't want those to come through, click it on. So now they won't come through. They get busy tone. Beyond that, you click on add number, but +1 area code and phone number. No spaces, dashes, or parentheses. Keep clicking add until you're done adding numbers. Once you are done, down here at the bottom right, you click on save. Still on the right-hand side, you click towards the top, go back to settings, and then make sure your list is over here on the right under selected. Even if it's already there, click on update. So now any numbers on these 3 lists, if they try to call into my system on any of my phone numbers, right? So main number, DID number, etc., they get busy tone. A call recording, this does one of 2 things. It either opens a new tab and takes you to callrecordings.virtualpbx.net, which has your asks you to log in with your Dash login information. Then you can see your call recordings. If you have AWS set up, like this account currently is, this instead takes you, basically mirrors the AWS setup, so you can see your call recordings, you can play them back, you can download them. Unfortunately, you cannot delete your recordings here. So if you actually wanted to delete your call recordings via AWS, you have to log into AWS directly. Monitor plan-specific feature. This allows you to see the status of everyone. Doesn't matter what device they're using. You can, in fact, specify by device if you want to, as well as seeing everybody, all available or who's busy. Also, each active inbound call would have their own little blue box and show who they're speaking to. Any parked calls would show up here with their caller ID and their parking spot number. Reports, this opens up a new tab. It takes you to reports.virtualpbx.com. This is also a plan-specific feature. It allows you to create your own reports. If you go into the show notes, there should be an advanced reporting demo link there that can show you some of what can be done. And if you're interested in adding this on, then you want to talk to our account services team. Voicemails, this takes you to your voicemail box manager. So as an admin, you can get to any voicemail box and you can see if they're full or not, for example. So this one is not, right? But you can see their messages, the date, the time, a phone number's involved, how long the message is. You can play it back, you can download it. Also, as an admin, right, you click on the box, you can move it to a different voicemail box, right? So like, oh, it's supposed to be in the support box. And now I only have 6. And you can also, right, change the status to get rid of it if you have a voicemail box that's full. Integration AWS, again, this is, you have to have this enabled, but this is where you would set up your AWS integration. This basically, you name it yourself, but these you get directly from AWS, excuse me, right? And then it's always going to be this web URL. Call center, this is an add-on to existing features. This is the call queues or ACD queues. In the show notes, you want to click on the ACD queues pro demo to show you what they can do. Queues are an advanced version of groups. So when I talked about groups, right, I said if Taylor was on a call and a second call came into the group, he still gets offered the call first. In queues, that doesn't happen, right? So if, say, Taylor and David are both in the same queue, call comes in, Taylor picks up. Second call comes in, that second call is not offered to Taylor because the system knows, oh, he's already on a queue call, and instead offers it to David. Right. Also within queues, your staff members can log themselves in and out of the queue, as well as mark themselves away or ready. Right. So like for when they go to lunch, they're marked away. When they come back, they're ready. End of their shift, they can end the session and log out. You also have things like different call routing strategies, like most idle, or you can go with like who's had the most calls, or least calls, excuse me. If it had the least amount of connected calls or least amount of offered calls, gets the call next. That sort of thing. Managers can actually eavesdrop in on a call as well as whisper or barge in on a call, right? So eavesdrop means you're just listening in. Whisper means you're helping your staff member, right? So only they can hear you. Barge means both people can hear you. Dynamic caller ID, this is a plan-specific feature. This allows you to create rules to change the outbound caller ID for your VoIP phone users. So first up, you give it a name, you choose a phone number on your account. And in this case, I said whenever my staff members dial 702 phone number to change their outbound caller ID to this 702 number on the account. All right, so it looks like it's a local call. This other option here is you can create a feature code. So now my staff members have to dial *951. Then they enter area code and phone number that they're reaching out to. When the system sees that, it changes their outbound caller ID to a phone number I select on the account, which that's not set up properly. Faxes, this is your fax manager. So this is an included feature. You can get to any fax box on the account. So it starts off on your inbound fax tab. So you can see the date and times of the phone numbers of the inbound faxes. You can download them and you can also delete them if you have a lot of faxes on your system. Outbound fax tab, select the fax box. This shows you faxes that left your system, right? That your staff was sending out. If you hover over the failed ones, it'll give you a little bit more information. In this case, it says timeout after or timeout waiting for initial communication. So if you see a failure on the outbound fax tab, that means we had a problem communicating with the other fax number, right? So this sounds like we actually had initial pickup, but then we didn't hear the proper tones to actually initiate the fax transfer. You can also click on this far right icon. That will give details, but it's not going to give you much more than what the mousing over does. Email to fax logs. If you see data here, that means the system had a problem processing this request, so it never reached the other phone number. Right? So you see, okay, it's the right email address, the right format. So then you want to click on the little eye icon here at the far right, and you see here the error was no valid attachments. Maybe they didn't attach anything. Maybe they tried to attach like a PNG file or a JPEG file instead of a PDF or a TIFF. Number Manager, this takes you back to your spare numbers page. Webhooks, plan-specific feature. This allows you to link your Dash account to other software. So uh, in our show notes, you want to look at the introduction to Zapier webinar. You can also go to developer.virtualpbx.com to see sample code of what we've done to link Dash to other software. This is some programming, so it's not super simple, although with Zapier, it's easier than most. You'd want to talk to our sales team if you want that. And then lastly, we have the user portal. So every person can get to their own user portal. It starts off on your voicemail tab, so you can listen to your messages, delete them, download them. Call history, you can see your own call history. You can change the date range, right? So you can go further back in time. Again, you can only go back so far. The fax tab will only work for users that have their own fax box, right? So they can see their fax history. Contact list is everything within the Dash account. Not something you can enter. The conference tab, this is your conference settings. So here's where your staff members update the conference room PIN numbers. Here are where people join muted or deafened. You have entry and exit tones. In a conference, you can add or invite other Dash users to your conference, lock the conference, mute everybody, unmute everybody, or end the conference call. Also, while in a conference, each person has their own little box. So you can mute a specific person or even kick out a specific person. And then we have the settings and devices. Right here is where people can enable call forwarding on their own. Just put a little check mark. Put +1 area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses, and then click on save. Right, and then when they're done, uncheck and then save again. All right, so that is everything. And I haven't seen any questions come up, so I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. I thank you for your time today, and we will be back next week, Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific.